fiqh of minority. And thank you all very much for coming during Saturday afternoon to be, inshallah, blessed by our shield today. For many of us, maybe only once in a lifetime we'll get a chance to meet a scholar of this caliber. Alhamdulillah, for 2 years in a row, we've been blessed with Shaykh Abdallah coming to the Adams Center. So I hope we can all appreciate having that blessing in our life. As we know, Shaykh Hamza, mashallah, every time he comes into town, pretty much graces with his presence. So I would hope that we would respect that, honor that. The Shaykh probably going to speak for a little while, so I'll be respectful of his time as well. I will turn it over to Shaykh Hamza Yusuf to give us a little bit more a biography of Shaykh Abdallah, as well as the importance of the topic of the fiqh of minority.
This one. Do you have a pad and paper? Yeah.
Does anybody have a pad and paper?
Thanks. Because I don't have any. Thanks. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. First of all, mashallah, it's really nice turnout. May Allah reward all of you. Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah, I think many of you know who he is, but for the few that might not, I'll just give a brief introduction. Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah is one of the most renowned authorities on Islamic law, and particularly on Islamic jurisprudence and usul al-fiqh, which is the methodology of derivation of rulings in Islam, ijtihad, things that relate to that aspect. He's also taught for many, many years at the university level tafsir, and he's a master of the Arabic language. He's an authority on Arabic literature and poetry. He was from a very prominent family in Mauritania. His father was one of the greatest scholars of West Africa. He's a well-known scholar. And Shaykh Abdallah was also minister at several different ministries in Mauritania. He was part of the founding generation during the independence of Mauritania, and he acted as vice president of the country, and he also served as a judge and various other positions. So inshallah, he's been here for medical, having just some medical tests and seeing some physicians. So we'll see how long he talks, but he just got done with the procedure. So تفضل شيخ. عندك ميكروفون. He hasn't started. Yeah, he hasn't started speaking. نعم مسموع إن شاء الله. بسم الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين. أيها الإخوة الأفاضل والأخوات والفضليات، سامحوني لقد تأخرت بالأمس فلم أستطع الحضور، وتأخرت اليوم أيضا قليلا لأني كنت عند الطبيب، والذي يكون عند الطبيب هو مريض، لكنكم تدعوني الآن وكأني طبيب ليعالج قضايا قد تمس حياة الناس وعلاقاتهم وسلوكهم الفردي والجماعي. كل تلك الموضوعات تهتمون بها، وأنا أحاول أن أعالج ذلك معه، لكن لا أدري ما هي الموضوعات المهمة الحساسة التي تودون أن أتناولها، فأرجو من الإخوة هنا أن يذكروا موضوعا أو يقولوا تكلم كما شئت. فهذا هو السؤال الأول موجه إليكم قبل أن أتحدث بما تيسر لي.
So the Sheikh give praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and prayers and peace on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on his family and companions, testifying that there is no God except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his true and last messenger, and he is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent with guidance in order to manifest this religion over all other ways. And he said, my virtuous brothers and virtuous sisters, first of all I want to ask your pardon for my not coming yesterday. I was unable to make it, and also because I was delayed coming here. People were here expecting it at 3 and I was delayed, but I was at the physicians, and when you're at the physicians, your ruling is one who's a sick person, and the physician is the one that tells you what to do. And so he said, now I'm here and you've come looking at me as a physician also, because the position of the scholar is to give solutions to people's problems, and we have societal ills. And so the role of the scholar is to treat those societal ills. And there are different ills in every society, but most of them relate to the practices of the people, the way in which they act in a society, and their behavioral patterns. And he said there are obviously many areas to look into, and I would attempt to address these areas and to give treatments for some of the illnesses of the society that you have specifically here. But it's important before I start really to understand that, because you're much more familiar with your own culture and what's happening here, and I'm not, because I'm coming from a different place. So does anybody
ذكر لي بالأمس الإمام ماجد أحد الإخوة هنا هو المسؤول، ما اسمه؟
علي بياض.
علي.
Where's Ali?
هذا علي.
He's right there.
هذا علي.
نعم.
هل يختلف شيئا أو؟
So, do you want something specific or let him talk?
Whatever he would like.
الذي يبدو لك يعني أنت.
ما دام الأمر هكذا فأقول وبالله أستعين وعليه أتوكل، وأسأله سبحانه وتعالى أن يوفقنا جميعا للخير وأن يجعلنا دعاة للخير، وأن يسلك بنا سبيل الخير ويعيذنا من طريق الشر. نستعين بالله سبحانه وتعالى لنتحدث عن شيء من الثقافة الأمريكية، هو التحدي. يبدو أن هذه البلاد هي بلاد التحدي، لكن ما هو التحدي الذي يواجه المسلمين أو يواجه الأقلية في كل مكان؟ الحقيقة بغض النظر عن كونها مسلمة أو غير مسلمة. يتمثل التحدي في أمرين: أولهما تعايش بين الفئات المختلفة والطوائف المتنوعة التي قد لا تنتمي إلى دين واحد أو إلى عرق واحد، مما يحدث شيئا من التناغم أو كذا نقول من التناقض، لأن من لا يعرف الشيء من يجهل الشيء فإنه يكون منكرا له، إن لم نقول فإنه يكون عدوا له. هذا التحدي الأول، تحدي التعايش. التحدي الثاني هو تحدي المحافظة على الخصوص. فهما طرفان لتحدي واحد، أي كيف نتعايش مع الآخر وفي نفس الوقت الذي نحافظ فيه على خصوصيته. إن الأمر يحتاج إلى توضيح وإلى بيان، لأن كثيرا من الناس أو كثيرا من الذين لم يدركوا حقائق الأمور يظنون بادئ ذي بدء أن خصوصيتك هي نقيض للتعايش مع الآخر، على حين أن هذه المقدمة خاطئة. لا يوجد تناقض بين الخصوصية وبين التعايش. عندما نتحدث هنا عن التعايش لا نتحدث عن العيش المشترك فقط، ولا عن التعايش السلمي يسمى coexistence pacifique، أي الوجود معا السلمي، وإنما نتحدث عن التعايش السعيد. فالذي نبحث عنه هو تعايش سعيد، وليس فقط تعايش بين طوائف كل منها يذهب في طريقه وباتجاهه، لا يمكن للآخر محبة أو تقدير، بل نريد تعايشا سعيدا فيه محبة وفيه تقدير وفيه تعاون على الخير. كيف، ما هي النظرة العامة التي أو الرؤية الشاملة التي تجعلنا نتغلب على هذا التحدي؟ أولا لنضع مسلمة أولى، هي أن المشتركات بين العناصر المختلفة في مكان ما هي أكثر من المتنافرات. المشتركات كثيرة، فدعونا ننظر من هذه الزاوية إلى المشترك. العنصر الثاني هو أن الخصوصية، وبخاصة خصوصية الإسلام، لا تمثل حاجزا في التعامل مع الآخر، بل تمثل حاجزا في حسن التعامل معه. هذه الدعاوى علينا أن نقدم عليها البرهان. المشتركات بينكم وبين هذا المجتمع مشتركات الأمن، كلكم يريد أن يكون آمنا في هذا البلد، فهذا طموح مشترك. مشتركات إشباع حاجات الإنسان من غذاء وكساء ووضع اقتصادي ملائم وتعليم، هذه مشتركات بينك وبين الآخرين قائمة لا شك فيها. فالإطعام من جوع والأمن من خوف هي مشتركات إنسانية لا شك فيها، أنتم تتقاسمونها في هذا الوقت. هناك مشتركات أخرى أيضا هي الحريات. كل إنسان يريد أن يكون حرا، أن يكون محكوما بالقانون. بلدكم هذا هو الذي يحمل نظريا، يعني أنا لا أحكم على، لكن القوانين هنا تقول بالحرية وبأن الناس يحاكمون أمام القانون. هذا أمر مهم جدا. قد يقول بعضهم فيه ممارسات تخالف هذا. نعم، ممارسات البشرية دائما تخالف حتى التعاليم الإلهية. هذا أيضا قدر المشترك. لماذا لا ننمي هذه المشتركات؟ كيف ننمي هذه المشتركات؟ بأن نقوم بالإبداع وبالاختراع. هذا البلد هو بلد يشتهر باختراعاته بمبادراته، فلنقوم بالإبداع، فلنقوم بالعمل الإنساني الذي يود كل شخص أن يقوم به، فلنبرز في العلوم وفي الفنون وفي التكنولوجيا. هذه كلها مشتركة. علينا أن نقلب المشتركات، أن نقدم المشتركات التي يتشارك بها كل المواطنين في هذا البلد، لنقدم المواطنة قيم المواطنة الحقة من حرية، من محافظة على الأمن، من تنمية للاقتصاد، من مشاطرة بالقيم الإنسانية. هذا هو العنصر الأول فيما يتعلق بتحدي المواطنة، بتحدي التعايش السعيد، وليس فقط أكررها، وليس التعايش السلمي، وإنما هو تعايش سعيد بين الأقلية والأكثرية، أو بين مختلف العناصر التي تقيم في بلدنا. الدليل الثاني
ممكن. أيوة. طيب. So I'll start and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me the ability to say something beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all people who call to good. We should nasta'inu billah, we ask for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I want to speak about something that relates to really the culture that you live in, the culture of America, which is a culture of challenges. And to look, we have basically two challenges here. The first one is the challenge of conviviality, of living together, of how we live together in a multicultural, pluralistic society with a lot of different types of people here. And whenever you have different types and different groups, you have very often an inability to recognize the other, or there's a sense of alienation from the other, and even rejection of the other, where we don't see anything. And it's well known, the Arabs say, whoever is ignorant of something tends to be its enemy. So when you don't know something, you tend to look at it askance and be fearful of it. And he said that so that is a major challenge of how to have conviviality, this living with one another peacefully in a society that does not have the type of solidarity or homogeneity that facilitates that you have in other cultures. He said the second challenge that we have is how we protect those specificities of our own community in a culture that has a dominant culture that is sometimes antagonistic to the individual qualities of a minority culture. And he said, so this is then how do we live together with the other, but also with ourselves, maintaining our own identity. And he said, now some people that might not be thinking deeply enough about these realities might think that the things that make you a specific community negate the possibility for you to actually work with other communities that might be different from you. And so that's one way of looking at it, but that's not really the proper way to look at it, because those things that make you unique as a community do not negate the possibility of working with other communities and living with other communities. And so what I want to talk about is not merely a peaceful coexistence, but actually a flourishing coexistence. Like, how do we flourish together as different groups, and not simply just to peacefully coexist, you do what you do and I do what I do. No. How can we live with love, with mutual respect, and also with a sense of the obligation of actually working together despite our differences for good. Ta'awun 'ala al-birri wa taqwa, to work together out of good. And the way that we can achieve that, first of all, we have to have a comprehensive vision of those things that will enable us to overcome the challenges that we have for these. So this is basically a proposition, and it needs proof to assert the truthfulness of it. And so the first proof that I would put forward to you is that in any human society, wherever we are as people, there actually are more commonalities than there are differences amongst human beings. There are things that we share as a species that are far more than the actual things that separate us and differentiate us, because each of us has this khususiyya, this specificity that makes us unique as a group, but that does not negate the commonalities that we share as a larger group. And so this doesn't mean that your specific qualities are an actual barrier to sharing and helping and living together with others. In fact, it could facilitate that. And how would I prove that? I would say, first of all, the single most important fundamental human need in this hierarchy of needs is security. Human beings need to feel secure in their societies. And this is a human concern wherever you go. People are concerned about feeling safe in their society. And then the second major concern is those needs that we have as human beings for our sustaining our livelihoods. So we have the human need of shelter, and we have the human need of nourishment, of food, and so the Quran reminds us that God is worthy of being worshipped by the mere fact that He has provided us security and has fed us, given us what we need to sustain ourselves. So these are two extremely important human needs that all of us share, irrespective of which background we come from, which culture we come from, or what creed we hold to. The second one is human liberty and mobility. The idea that human beings, somebody should not constrain another human being for doing what he wants to do, as long as it's not harmful to the society. So this is something that's very important. And And human beings want to be free. It's part of the human condition that you want to feel free. And then also that people want, when we're living in societies, we want to be under the law, that we live in a society that is a lawful society, that the law is, everybody is equal under the law. So one group is not raised over another group. This is a common human desire for people to feel, given that they're in this social contract, that they actually feel that they're part of it and they're not being abused by that system. Now, he said, obviously some people at this point will say, and he said in America, you have basically a society where there's a rule of law, which is a positive thing. And he said, now some people will say, well, it's not always practiced, or there's a lot of shortcomings in this system. And he said, my response to that is, this is the human condition, that it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to find shortcomings in people's application of whatever their society holds as ideals. He said, even our societies that hold the Islamic ideal, look how far people fall short of that ideal. So this is part of the human condition. And he said, another thing that is very important is the idea of human flourishment, that people want to be productive by their nature. And we should desire to be the most productive people that we can. We should desire to be productive in the arts, in the sciences, in education, in all of these areas of human endeavor. And then also that we understand that citizenship has its responsibilities. That if you're living in a society with freedom, that you also have the responsibility of being a citizen of that society. So you can't simply be for yourself, but you have to be for the society. And part of that involves being concerned about the security of the society, be concerned about the well-being of the society, and those things that facilitate people to live together. And so, to sum up in this first challenge, this challenge of living together, I want to emphasize the fact that I'm not talking about mere coexistence, that this is one level. I'm actually talking about a felicitous conviviality that enables us not only to live together, but to live together in a way that engenders human flourishing, that we actually are flourishing in our lives.
فيما يتعلق بالدين، هذه القيم تعايشية، ما الذي يضبط الدين الإسلامي إلى هذه القيم؟ هل الدين الإسلامي يطلب من أتباعه أن يكونوا ضد الآخرين أو يؤذوا الآخرين؟ الجواب بنصوص القرآن والسنة هو لا، لأن النظرة الإنسانية في الدين الإسلامي تجعل الناس كلهم عبيد لله سبحانه وتعالى، وبالتالي هو الذي خلقهم وهم سواء جميعا. يا أيها الناس إن ربكم واحد وأباكم واحد، فلا فضل لعربي على عجمي ولا لعجمي على عربي إلا بالتقوى، الناس لآدم وآدم من تراب. هذا مبدأ الإنسانية هو مبدأ عريق في الإسلام. علينا أن نحاول أن نقدم هذه النصوص بدلا من الجزئيات الأخرى التي قد يتعامل معها من لا يفهم بها، لأن مشكلتكم ليست في الشريعة، وإنما هي في فهم بعض الناس للشريعة وهم يجهلون التعامل معها. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: المسلم من سلم الناس من لسانه ويده، والمجاهد من جاهد نفسه في طاعة الله. انظروا كيف أعطى للمعنى. يعني نحن نعرف أن الإسلام أن تؤمن بالله وتشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة، لكن الإسلام له معنى آخر، هو أن يسلم الناس منه. قال الناس، وهذا في حديث البيهقي وابن حبان: من سلم الناس من لسانه ويده. والمجاهد قال: من جاهد نفسه في طاعة الله. صرفها عن معنى القتال إلى معنى مجاهدة النفس، أن يكون الإنسان مسيطرا على نفسه، آمرا لنفسه بالمعروف ناهيا لها عن المنكر قبل أن يتحدث عن الآخرين. ولهذا قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن كل الأرض هي لله سبحانه وتعالى، وأن المسلم جعلت هي الأرض مسجدا وطهورا، أن المسلم يعتبر الأرض مسجدا له، يصلي في أي مكان على وجه الأرض. فأيما رجل من أمتي أدركته الصلاة فليصلي. فهذا تأصيل لهذا المعنى، أن المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسان، من سلم الناس مسلمون. الرواية الثانية: من سلم الناس من لسانه ويده. والمجاهد من جاهد نفسه في طاعة الله. هذه المعاني يجب علينا أن نكررها وأن نقدمها لأولادنا، لأنها ضرورية للتعايش. أن نعلم أن دينك لا يدعوك إلى محاربة الآخر، لا يدعوك حتى إلى قول السوء بالنسبة للآخر. ولهذا جاء في الحديث الآخر: اتق الله حيثما كنت واتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. الناس بخلق حسن. وجاء في الآية القرآنية: وقولوا للناس حسنا. قولوا للناس حسنا. إذا الخطاب للمسلمين أن يقولوا حسنا، أن لا يقولوا كلاما سيئا. فإذا كنت لا تقول كلاما سيئا، معنى ذلك أنك لن ترتكب خطأ أو خطيئة في اتجاه الآخر. هذا أمر مهم جدا، ومبدأ أساسي علينا هنا أن نتحلى به، لأن الدين هو الخلق، وهذا الخلق هو الذي من شأنه أن يكسبك الاحترام بالنسبة للآخرين، وأن يكسبك ربما المحبة أيضا. وإذا كنت ترجو أن يكون الناس على مثل ما أنت عليه، فقدم نفسك تقديما حسنا لتكون قدوة، لتكون أسوة، وأن لا تقدم نفسك كعامل اضطراب أو عامل تخويف أو عامل نفور أو اشمئزاز. دينك لا يطلب منك ذلك. ما هي الخصوصية التي يطلب منك الدين أن تحافظ عليها؟ هذه الخصوصية هي مضمونة بالدستور الأمريكي. أنا قرأت الدستور الأمريكي الذي ينص على حرية الدين، حرية التدين. الإيمان أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر. لا شيء يمنعك من أن يكون صدرك مملوءا بالإيمان، تعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله، واعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله. لا أحد يمنعك من ذلك، والقانون لا يمنعك من ذلك. من تطلب منك من الخصوصية أن تصلي، أن تعبد ربك بطريقتك التي تريد أن تعبدها في مسجدك. في أمريكا يجوز بناء المساجد على حد ما أعلم، لا يوجد إشكال. يوجد إشكال في بعض البلاد، لكني زرت إيرلندا لله، فقال لي بعض الإيرلنديين، بعض الناس هناك الإيرلنديين، إن المسجد هنا أصبح يمثل لنا جمالا لمدينتنا، فالشعوب تختلف. ففي إيرلندا فرحوا بالمسجد وقالوا المسجد يمثل تكاملا إعلاميا مع المدينة، بينما في بعض البلاد الأخرى يشمئزون من المآل. طبعا هذا طبع بشري، المهم أن يكون القانون ضمينا وكفيلا لدور العبادة، كما كان الدين الإسلامي كفيلا لدور العبادة أيضا.
So the second area is what relates to our religion itself and how it dictates to us what should we be doing. So is our religion a religion that asks its followers to actually harm other people or to not live with other people? If anybody that reads the Quran has to come to the conclusion that that's not true, because the Quran is very clear. The Prophet ﷺ told us that all of you, O humanity, there's no preference of a black man over a white man, or a white man over a black man, or an Arab over a non-Arab, or a non-Arab over an Arab. All of you are from Adam. Adam is from dust. And this is a basic human principle, that we're from one family. And so when we look at the Sharia, we have to conclude, for anybody that has a deeper understanding, that the problem is not in the Sharia itself. It's in the human understanding of Sharia. How do people understand the law? If you look at another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, and there's different recensions of the hadith, but in one of them, which Imam al-Bayhaqi and others related, the Prophet ﷺ said that the definition of a Muslim is the one who humanity is safe from his hand and his tongue. And he used the word nas. Humanity is safe from his hand and his tongue. So he told us al-Muslim is the one, man salima nasu, the people are safe. All people. That is the quality of the Muslim. And then he said, and the believer is the one who struggles against himself in order to put himself into a state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the mu'min is the one who commands himself before he commands others, who submits in his own self before he calls others to do that. And he said also, if you look just at the world that we're in, the Prophet ﷺ did not limit the Muslims to any specific place in the world. He said the entire earth is for you a masjid and a source of purity. And so he said wherever you are, you can pray there. And so if you look at those two aspects, that the Muslim is the one who human beings are safe from their hand and their tongue, and who struggle with themselves first and foremost before calling others to do that, so they themselves practice what they're preaching, and then that the whole world is there for you. So our religion is not a religion that calls us to be belligerent with other people by nature. And not only that, but it extends to the way you speak to others, because the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ said, speak to people in a good way. He said, have good character with people, call them to Islam. And the Quran says, and speak to people in the most beautiful manner. Argue with them with a beautiful disputation. So all of these things indicate to us that our religion is a religion founded in morality, that it's a religion based on this morality. And the beauty of this is that if you actually practice these qualities in and of yourself, you will find that they actually engender respect in others, that other people will respect you for adhering to these principles and displaying these excellent qualities. And he said, even more than that, it can engender love in people, that people will be naturally inclined to love you. And so this is important. But if people become agents of fear, of engendering fear and of engendering instability and these things, then another result comes out of that. And so if you look at this, what is the overriding khususiyya, this specific quality of our religion? First of all, I want to remind you that this quality is actually guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States, because I read the Constitution, and right at the outset of the Bill of Rights, he said it guarantees the right to freedom of religion. And so you in this country are guaranteed the right to have belief in Allah. And he said that is the fundamental quality of the believers, is that they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's the first one. So your breast should be filled with faith, with iman, and you should do what you need to engender that faith in your hearts. And the law of the land not only does it not prevent you from doing that, but it actually guarantees your right to do that. So you have no excuse in that area. And then the second is the prayer. This is a very specific quality of the Muslims, is that they pray 5 times a day. And he said, and this necessitates the building of places of worship where they can gather to fulfill these, even though they can pray anywhere, but this is part of our religion, to gather and fill. Now he said people have different attitudes, people outside of our own community. When I was in Ireland, in their city of Dublin, I met Irish people who said they actually liked the masjids, that they added a certain beauty to the skyline of the city. And he said, so you're going to find people in other countries that actually think that masjids are beautiful and they're architecturally enhancing the culture. He said there's other places that he went to where that's not the case. They don't like the minarets. They don't want the minarets on their skylines. They try to enact laws and things against those. So he said this is, some people, they're going to be upset about this and troubled by this. He said this is just human nature, that some people don't have a problem with other people and some people do.
دينك يطلب منك أن تصلي صلاة الصيام، وأن تصلي وأن تصوم وأن تزكي وأن تحج بيت الله الحرام إن استطعت إلى ذلك سبيلا. كل هذه المعاني ليس فيها ما يخالف القانون ولا يخالف المجتمع. إذا صليت على طريقتك في مسجدك، إذا زكيت مالك أعطيت جزءا منه للفقراء، فهذا عمل طيب، وبالإمكان أن تشترك مع الآخرين في شركات تدفع للفقراء وتساعد الضعفاء، الفقراء في الصومال، الفقراء في مناطق الحروب أو مناطق الكوارث أو مناطق الجفاف في إفريقيا وفي آسيا، أن تساهم مع الآخرين، مع المسلم وغير المسلم. هذا أمر مهم جدا. دينك يدعوك إلى هذا. حلف الفضول، النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان مع قوم مشركين اتفقوا في حلف على أنه لا يظلم أحد في مكة. قال شهدت حلفا في ذلك جدعان لو دعيت إليه الإسلام لأجبت. يعني هذا الحلف لأنه كان قائما على الخير، لأنه كان قائما على العدالة، لأنه كان قائما على منفعة الناس، على إصلاح الناس وصلاحهم، ولأجل ذلك قال لو دعيت إليه بالإسلام لأجبت. قوموا هنا بحلف الفضول، اتفقوا مع كل الشرائع التي تخدم المجتمعات، تخدم الأغراض النبيلة والأعمال الطيبة، الأعمال الخيرية. الأطباء هنا ذهبوا إلى مناطق في إفريقيا ومنها موريتانيا ليعالجوا المرضى، ليشخصوا الأمراض الموجودة. هذا عمل طيب جدا. كان فيهم غير مسلمين، بعضهم مسلمون وبعضهم الآخر ليس مسلما، لكنهم جميعا يسعون إلى هدف نبيل، إلى إغاثة الضعاف، إلى مساعدة المنكوبين، إلى معالجة المرضى. هذه أعمال نبيلة دينكم يدعوكم إليها، هذا هو جهادكم، قوموا بهذا العمل. هذه هي أركان الدين المطلوبة. هل أنتم تقومون بها حقا؟ هذا أمر مهم جدا. هل تصلون صلوات في أوقاتها؟ هل تؤدون زكاة مالكم كل سنة للفقراء؟ هل تصومون شهر رمضان؟ هل تذهبون إلى الحج مرة في العمر، حج وعمرة مرة في العمر؟ ممكن أن يكون أن يوجد صندوق كما في ماليزيا يضع فيه الناس شيء من المال ليحج به من لم يستطع أن يحج. هي مجرد سفر، كما يسافر المرء هنا في سياحة إلى أطراف أمريكا وإلى أوروبا، يسافر لأيام ليقوم بالحج. هذه هي الأعمال المطلوبة منه. الإنسان لو جلس في بيته في مصلاه يذكر الله، صلى في جماعة وجلس يذكر الله حتى طلعت الشمس وصلى ركعتين، يكون بمنزلة من أدى عمرته. هل قمنا بهذا العمل؟ هذا العمل أفضل من أن تفكر في أن تؤذي الآخر. هذا ليس من القربات ولا ليس من العبادات في شيء. أن يكون تفكيرك مصبا على الخير، مصبا على ذكر الله سبحانه وتعالى، على تزكية نفسك من الحقد ومن الحسد ومن بغض الناس. هذا هو الجهاد الذي يجاهد نفسه في طاعة الله. هذه هي المفاهيم، وهي كلها مأخوذة من القرآن والسنة. في حديث هذيل، وهذا الحديث هو حديث الأقليات. هذيل رجل كان يسكن مع قومه وكانوا مشركين، لم يكونوا يدينون بدين، كانوا يعبدون الأصنام. جاء إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فرأى الصحابة والإسلام انتشر، فقال يا رسول الله، يقال أن من لم يهاجر هلك، يعني لم أهاجر إليكم، أنا بقيت مع قومي. قال يا هذيل أقم الصلاة وآتي الزكاة واسكن من أرض قومك حيث شئت. وفي رواية تكن مهاجرا، ولا قالوا أنه حسن. وهذا الحديث حسن، رواه ابن حبان ورواه البيهقي. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ماذا طلب من هذيل؟ تقوم بأعمالك أنت واترك السوء، لا تشرب خمرا، لا تقرب فاحشة، اترك أنت السوء، ما أحد يجبرك على ذلك، لكنك أنت لا تجبر الآخرين على شيء. يا هذيل أقم الصلاة وآتي الزكاة واهجر السوء واسكن من أرض قومك حيث شئت. بدلا من أن يؤذي الآخرين أو أن يترك شخصا ليؤذيهم، لأنه لا يجوز لي أن أؤذيه ولا يجوز لي أيضا أن أسمح لشخص آخر أن يؤذيه. هذا أمر مهم جدا، علينا أن نعرفه حق المعرفة، وأن من ترك ذلك، من ترك شخصا يؤذي الآخرين فهو آثم أيضا. عليه دائما أن ينتبه. المسلم ليس أنانيا، لا يقول فقط أنا لنفسي، بل يهتم بصلاح المجتمع، يهتم بمساعدة الآخرين، يهتم بأخذ أيديهم ومساعدتهم. إذا رأى ضعيفا، إذا رأى امرأة، إذا رأى رجلا مسنا، إذا رأى مريضا، أن يقوم إليه، أن يساعده. هذه هي الأخلاق، هذه هي القيم التي تكسب الاحترام والمحبة وتنزع من الصدور تلك الصورة المشوهة عن الإسلام التي قد يقول بها أشخاص يظنون أنهم على خير، لكنهم لم يفهموا الشريعة حق فهمها. سمعوا بعض الجزئيات، فهذه الجزئيات لا تمثل الشريعة في مجموعها. الشريعة إنما تبحث عن المصالح، كما يقول العلامة ابن القيم: شريعة مصلحة كلها وحكمة كلها، فما خرج عن المصلحة إلى المفسدة وعن الحكمة إلى غيرها فليس من الشريعة وإن نسيب إليها. الشريعة هي تنظر في مصالح العباد، فكل ما خرج عن مصالح العباد هذا ليس من الشريعة. قتل الناس أو إيذاءهم هذا ليس من مصالح العباد. ليس هذا فقط، بل إن هناك أيضا ما يقول بالأخوة. الأخوة أعظم من المساواة. المساواة أن نكون سواء أمام القانون، لكن الأخوة معنى الإيجاب، فيها معنى الإيجاب، أن يساعد بعضنا بعضا. جاء في الحديث: لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. يقول الحافظ ابن رجب الحنبلي: لأخيه في الإنسانية، ليس فقط لأخيه المسلم، ولكن لأخيه أن يحب لكل بني آدم ما يحبه لنفسه من الخير. قال ذلك ابن رجب، قاله الشبرخيتي المالكي وابن رجب الحنبلي، وقال كل شروح أو جملة من شروح 40 النووية فسروا هذا الحديث بأنها الأخوة الإنسانية. هذه المعاني تساعدكم إذا تعلمتموها وعلمتموها لأبنائكم، وأنا أرجو أن تعلموا أبنائكم دينكم حق المعرفة، ليعرفوه حق المعرفة. إذا علمتموه تعلمتم هذه المعاني وعلمتموها لأبنائكم، من شأن ذلك أن يوطن الدين في هذه الديار، وأن لا يكون غريبا فيها، وبالتالي أن يندمج المسلمون لكنه اندماج إيجابي، أن يوجد تعايش لكنه تعايش سعيد، وليس تعايشا فيه نوع من النفور وفيه نوع من التنكر أو النكران أو المناكرة أو المنافرة. هذا ليس مطلوبا في شرعنا.
No. So when we look at our religion is founded on these basic principles of prayer, of fasting, of paying your zakat, of making hajj at least once in your life, and all of these basic principles that make up our religion, none of them go against the law of the land that you're in. And so this is a place where you can fulfill your obligations. You can pay your zakat, take a portion of your wealth to help poor people, to help people. For instance, in Somalia, there's a lot of problems there. Or in other places where you have, for instance, wars occurring and people in very difficult situations. You have places where there's drought. You have places where there's natural calamities, floods and earthquakes and such things. All of these you can help people, and your religion calls you to do this. So if you look, for instance, at the Prophet ﷺ making mention of the alliance of virtue, that was an alliance in the Jahiliyyah where the Quraysh all agreed to help the oppressed and to help those in need. The Prophet ﷺ witnessed that alliance, and he said, I witnessed an alliance in the Jahiliyyah that if I was called to it in Islam, I would answer. And that's because it was an alliance that was based on good. It was an alliance based on justice. And the Prophet ﷺ was acknowledging that even outside of Islam, there are things that are very positive and good that we should be part of. And he said, for example, you have physicians here. Just recently, he said, in Mauritania, there was a group of physicians that came from the United States to help the Mauritanians and to help them upgrade their healthcare system and to analyze what the problems were so that they can contribute to that. And he said even some of them who went were not Muslims. There were non-Muslims amongst the group, and yet they went because they had a noble goal, and the goal was not limited just to Muslims, that other people could share in this. And so it's important for us to do this. So you should all be doing things like this. Pray your prayers and pay your zakat and fast and do your hajj if you're able to, at least once in your life. And then one of the things that you can do is create a fund for people in the United States who are in impoverished conditions, where they could actually make the hajj, so you can help other people who are not able to make the hajj. There are things, if you look, for instance, if you pray Fajr in a group, jama'ah, and then you sit after your prayer until the sun rises, the Prophet ﷺ said it's equivalent to making Umrah. So look at that good action that you can do. How much better is that than going and causing harm to other people? It's much better to be doing these things instead of harming people. And then to look at, if you want to see the foundational hadith for minority communities, amongst Muslims is the Hadith of Fudayk, which is related in different narrations of it. But Fudayk was a man who lived in the desert with his people. They hadn't become Muslim, and when he went to visit the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the Prophet, "O Messenger of Allah, some people have said to me that I'm not a true Muslim unless I make hijrah, and I'm living amongst my people and calling them to Islam." And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Fudayk, O Fudayk, establish your prayer and pay your zakat and avoid evil, and then you can reside wherever you want." So wherever you want to reside, you can reside. As long as you do those things, you can reside wherever you want. And in one riwayah it says, and if you do those, you're a muhajir. Like that is an internal hijrah. And so the Prophet ﷺ was giving permission for people to live amongst other people as long as they could fulfill their obligations, and did so. But they shouldn't do the things that those people are doing that are bad. If they're drinking, they're not forcing you to drink. If they're doing sinful things, they're not forcing you to do sinful things. He said the Muslim is not a selfish creature by nature. Muslims should not be selfish. They should be concerned about other people. Muslims are people that if they see people that are weak or having difficult time or sick, that they actually go and attempt to help them. This is something that is part of our religion, and it's part of the qualities that inhere in Muslims. And so in doing these things, if we fulfill these obligations, it actually removes the type of resentment or contempt that some people have in their hearts towards Muslims. And some of that is due to the fact that some Muslims, thinking they're doing good deeds and having limited understanding of Islam, or thinking that taking parts of Islam and decontextualizing them and not seeing the holistic nature of Islam, they end up doing things in the name of Islam that actually distort the image of Islam in the eyes of others, and that image needs to be rectified. It's important for us to remember what Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said in his famous statement, that Islam, all of it is maslahah. All of Islam is benefit. It benefits human beings. And then he said, and all of Islam is hikmah. And it's wise, and it's rahmah, and it's merciful, and it's adalah, it's just. So he said, if it goes from maslahah to mafsada, if it goes from a maslahah, so a benefit, to some harm, it's not from Islam. If it goes from wisdom to foolhardiness or foolishness or stupidity, it's not from Islam. If it goes from mercy to cruelty, it's not from Islam. And if it goes from justice to oppression, it's not from Islam. That those four things are the defining qualities of this religion. And so any action that you see that doesn't embody one of those four things, then it's not from Islam. نعم. إلى ظلم. نعم قلت هذا.
ما خرج عن الرحمة إلى ضدها فليس من الإسلام.
نعم.
ضد العدل.
أنا قلت له. نعم. And then he said, if you look at Islam, Islam is a fraternity. And he said brotherhood is much greater than equality. Because when you have brotherhood, you don't just want to be equal. You actually want to help other people. You want to elevate other people. And the Prophet ﷺ said in a sound hadith that Imam Nawawi relates, that none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. And he said that Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali said that this was the insaniya, that it's the brotherhood of humanity. In other words, this transcends simply the fraternity of believers, but actually extends to others. And Imam Shabrakhiti from the Maliki said this, and the other scholars, Imam Nawawi. So if you look in the commentaries of the Hadith of 40 Nawawi, they will actually mention this, that this included other things. So these are very exalted meanings in our religion. And if we learn these meanings and then teach them to our children, this is the way that you will make firm your religion, that you will indigenize the religion where you are, and it will become a part of the culture that you're in. And this will be a way, particularly here for you as a minority community, by practicing, embodying, and communicating these realities to others, you will create this felicitous or this flourishing conviviality, living with others in a way that enhances the society, that makes it productive, and will avoid the types of animosities, aggressions, the alienation that comes from having a different understanding. Yeah. شكرا. You can get that back.
إلى أن تتعلم دينها وأن تعلم أبنائها بالمحافظة على دينهم وأن تقيم من دينها جسور مودة مع الآخرين وأن لا تقيم منه حواجز فصل بينها وبين الآخرين. الأقلية المسلمة تحتاج إلى جامعات تعلم الدين. يقول العلماء إن الطبيب الذي لا يحسن مهنته مضر على البدن أضر من الجاهل. كذلك فإن نصف الفقيه الذي لا يحسن فهم الشريعة فإنه أضر على الدين من الجاهل أيضا. فهو بفهمه القاصر وبأخذه لبعض الجزئيات ليطبقها في مكان لا يصلح تطبيقها فيه لينزلها في غير محلها يضر بدين الناس وبدنياهم. فنحن نحتاج إلى علماء متضلعين في الدين ليقدموا لنا الحلول المناسبة لمجتمعنا، لعصرنا الذي نعيش فيه، للبيئة التي نتعامل معها، للإنسانية جمعاء. بدون هؤلاء العلماء لا يمكن للمجتمع المسلم هنا في هذه الديار وفي الديار الأخرى أن ينهض نهضة صحيحة، بل إنه سيتعثر دائما، لأن من يدعون العلم وهم لم يعرفوا منه إلا جزءا هم كذلك الذي يقول فويل للمصلين ثم لا يعرف بقية الآية الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون، فهو يعرف جزءا فقط. لكني سأضرب لكم مثلا. كان أناس في سفر لتفهموا معنى الفقه. إذا لم يكن إنسان فقيها قد يأخذ جزئية آية لكنه لا يحسن تطبيقها. كان أناس في سفر في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من أصحابه، فأحدهم كان فيه جراح، كان يريد أن يصلي، قال له لا بد أن تغتسل، لأن الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول وإن كنتم جنبا فطهروا. اغتسل رجل مات، فلما جاءوا إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في إحدى الروايات قال قتلوه قتلهم الله، إنما دواء العي السؤال. هل لا سألوا إذ جهلوا؟ إنما دواء العي السؤال. فدانهم على ذلك كيف تفتون بهذه الفتوى فقتلتم الرجل؟ لماذا؟ لأنهم عرفوا جزئية لكنهم لم ينظروا في الكلية، وهي ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما، التي تنهى عن النفس البشرية مقدمة على الصلاة. هم لم يعرفوا هذا التقصير، لم يعرفوا هذه الكلية، وبالتالي إذا عرف الإنسان جزئية فقط بإمكانه أن يهلك الناس بجزئية فقط، لأنه لا يعرف الكليات التي هي صيانة النفوس والأديان والأموال والعقول والأعراض. لا يعرف هذه الكليات، لا يتعامل مع الكليات، بل يتعامل مع جزئيات فقط سمعها من حديث أو آية ويقول لا أنا عندي الدليل. لا بد من تكوين علماء يفقهون كل ذلك ليكونوا قادة للمجتمع وليقودوا المجتمع بالاستنباط والانضباط إلى الطريق الصحيح. جامعة الزيتون التي يشرف عليها أخونا الشيخ حمزة في كاليفورنيا ومراكز أخرى والمنظمات التي هنا إسنا وكير وغيرها من المنظمات بإمكانها أن تقوم بعمل كبير إذا هي نسقت جهودها وأنشأت جامعات تعلم العلم الحقيقي وتعرف أيضا أوضاع العصر، لأن من يعرف الشريعة ولا يعرف حقيقة العصر فإنه يخطئ، كما يقول ابن القيم أيضا، يقول لا بد من فقه الواقع وفهم الواقع واستنباط الواقع، لأنك إذا لم تعرف الواقع حق معرفته فإنك ترتكب خطأ. هذه مشكلة كبيرة في التعامل مع فقه الأقليات والتعامل حتى مع فقه الأكثريات. نحن في العالم الإسلامي نحتاج اليوم إلى فقه، بدلا من أنصاب الفقهاء الذين هم أضروا على الدين من الجهال، يضرون الدين كثيرا لأنهم لم يعرفوا إلا جزئيات، وبالتالي لم يعرفوا الكليات ولم يضموا الكليات إلى الجزئيات.
So it's important for your community to establish bridges of compassion between others and love, and that it's also very important that the minority community here establish institutions, especially of higher learning. One of the things that our scholars mention is that half a physician is dangerous for the body and half a scholar is dangerous for the faith. And so you have scholars that we need scholars that know the religion in a deep sense, because without those scholars then you won't have the guidance necessary in the conditions that you find yourselves in. There are many people that claim to have knowledge, but they don't know the universals. They know particulars of knowledge, and it's very dangerous to have particular knowledge but not to have universal knowledge. It's like, for instance, knowing the verse وَيْلُ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, woe to the people who pray, and then not knowing the next half of the verse, which says, meaning those who are heedless while they pray. So if you don't know the second half, you only know that first verse, you don't know the second verse, then you have a complete misunderstanding. And this is very problematic because this happens a lot. We have people that have some knowledge, but they don't have enough knowledge to really understand the context of situations. And I'll give you an example of that from the Seerah. A group of Sahaba were out, and one of them was wounded pretty badly, and the wound had dried, and he needed to do a major ablution, and so he asked the people that he was with, "What do you think? Should I do the tayammum or not?" And they said, "No, you have to do ghusl because we have water." And so he did the ghusl, it opened the wound again, and he bled to death. And when they got back, they told the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet got very upset about this, and he said they killed their companion, and then he made a strong statement, that they've destroyed themselves as well in doing that. And so he said that the Prophet then said, don't they know that the cure for ignorance is to ask if you don't know? The Quran says, ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. And then he said this is because they looked at one verse which said if you're in a state of major pollution, then you have to do ghusl. That's one verse. But another verse says don't destroy yourselves. And so one is over the other because that was a particular, whereas the universal is the protection of yourself. And so had they known that there's a triaging of proofs here, they would have known not to apply that particular verse in a situation where a universal application was more appropriate. And he said these are what are called the universals, the kulliyat. And we have the protection of religion, the protection of life, the protection of intellect, the protection of wealth, the protection of family and of dignity. That this is very important that you have scholars that understand this. And he said that they're like the organizations like Zaytuna College, ISNA, CARE, you have many organizations in the United States, that it's important that they participate in this, in the creation of institutions of higher learning, so that people will know what to do and how to apply these things. Because you have to know fiqh al-waqi', which is the jurisprudence of the condition that you're in. Jurisprudence is not a fixed thing. Fiqh is not fixed. It's a fluid thing. It changes based on the conditions. In some situations you do one thing, but in another situation you do another thing. And the wisdom is knowing how to apply these things. You have to understand the place that you're living in. You have to understand also how to derive the rulings based on those conditions and those situations. And this needs scholars who are trained in this ability to reason legally in Islamic jurisprudence. And this takes a knowledge of these universals. It takes a knowledge of usul. If you don't have these knowledges, then you won't be able to do this. You won't be able to do this properly. ها؟ اوكي. هذا اذان قريب. نعم.
أخيرا نسأل الله لنا ولهم التوفيق وأن ينفعنا وينفعهم بما سمعوا. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. الحمد لله على كل حال ونعوذ بالله من حال النار. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. اللهم افتح لنا بفتوحاتك ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. أوصيتم السنة الماضية بأن يذكروا بعض الأذكار فما أدري هل
He said last year he advised all of you to do a certain amount of dhikr. So he doesn't know, did you practice his advice from last year or not? But he hopes you did. He said, like the Prophet ﷺ, prayer on the Prophet ﷺ, at least the bare minimum to do 100 times on the Friday. Every day 100 times. And then also any good actions, charitable actions, those are also types of dhikr to be. He said like doctors are doing a very good service. He said now I'm thinking about them more than normal because I'm under their care right now. Any question? Maybe you take 5 questions. Oh, I need the pen. I'll give it to you though. Oh. Any questions? Go ahead.
What happens when at least some of these groups are not kind of antagonists to Islamic beliefs? The example I would give is that one of the groups that is interested is, for example, the gay community. The community right now is about 3 positions. One is to support same-sex marriage. Another one is to support the community-based violence. I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah, that's a good example. Topical. هو يسأل عن يعني أنت تفضلت بالتعاون مع الجماعات التي تدعو إلى الخير، وعندنا مثلا بالنسبة للمضادين الإسلام هنا يعني في مجموعة من الناس يحاربون الإسلام إعلاميا وبطرق أخرى. فقال أن في هناك جماعات تقوم بالدفاع عن الإسلام والمسلمين وحقوق المسلمين، ومن ضمنهم المثليون، لأنهم كذلك يرون أنفسهم يعني أقلية مضطهدة، فبالتالي يشارك مع المظلومين من الجماعات الأخرى ويقومون. فهو يقول أنه هم يريدون يعني كود برو كوو، هم يريدون أنه إذا نحن هم يقفون معنا ضد هذا الظلم أنه نقف معهم كذلك في حقوقهم وفي. فهو قال هذا مثال فقط، يعني ماذا نعمل بالجماعات التي قد تخالف مبادئهم مبادئنا.
نحن نتعامل مع الناس بالفضاء المشترك بالخير، لكن نحن لا نكون مثليين، نحن الإسلام مثليين بالتأكيد.
So he said, we should work with people in any good thing that's good, but something like that, like homosexuality, he said it's simply You can't be a Muslim and call to that, openly. As somebody have a personal problem or something, but to be openly saying that this is okay, he said we can't do that. Muslims cannot do that. It's just not possible.
نحن نشارك الأمريكان في الانتخابات في مبادرات.
So we can participate like in good initiatives. We can participate in elections.
نقوم بواجباتنا.
And fulfill the rights and obligations. And he said you should always try to take the better position. And sometimes it means lesser of two evils. أنا قلت نعم أنا عرفت أنه سيأتي بعد.
أنت تقرأ كذا. لا أقوم بدعاية لأحد لرئيس ولا لنائب برلماني أنا فقط.
He said I'm not supporting anybody or telling you vote for somebody specific. He said that's not my role. I'm not doing that. But he said I don't want you to be passive or just negative. You have to be positive.
I just want to say that I'm so honored to seeing such a scholar, open-minded, and I just totally love to hear what he's saying.
Okay. قال أنه يتشرف جدا أن يرى هذا الانفتاح من عالم جليل، أنه هو يتشرف بالاستماع إلى كلامك والجلوس أمامك. وهذا المعقولية في الكلام.
بارك الله فيك.
Can you repeat that shit in English?
هناك النساء يريدون أن يسلم. هناك آخر النساء.
Yeah, let's take one of the ladies. Go ahead. نعم. He said from the norms of the Americans is they put ladies first, so we should be putting the ladies first.
أعطوه ما فيه الميكروفون يا شيخ علي. ما في ميكروفون تعطينا.
Go ahead. Okay. قال بالنسبة للتعايش السعيد ما هي الأولويات فيما سوى الجامعات إنشاء الجامعات هناك مؤسسات أخرى ما ترى الأولويات في تأسيسها؟
التعايش السعيد يشمل كل شرائح العمل. الصحافة أن يكون المسلمون في الصحافة يتعاملون مع الصحفيين، يتعاملون في الإذاعات، أن يكون المسلمون في الثقافة، أن يكونوا حتى إلى حد ما مع فرق الموسيقى الجيدة، وأن يكونوا في كل مكان، أن يكونوا في كل مكان يخدم المصالح العامة ويخدم الخير.
So he said that, basically it's all the strata of society. Every society has different strata. And so Muslims should be engaged in all of them. For instance, we need solid journalism. We need to be involved in film and media. We need to be involved in all of these different areas. He said even if it's good music, then people should also be part of that. And he said also sports. This is part, Muslims should be engaged in all of these elements that make up a society. He said, but don't ghettoize yourselves. It's very important for Muslims not to ghettoize themselves, that we should be helping people get out of the ghetto and not becoming marginalized so that you don't have any power or influence. And you should also really be open to your neighbors, greet your neighbors. He said initially they might not be so happy about it, but over time you wear people down, they'll open up. This one is يعني أنه الشباب يحتاجون إلى إرشاد خاص حول الصلاة ولا يعرفون أهميتها في أمريكا ولا يعرفون عقوباتها إذا تركت. نعم. So he's saying, this is asking about the youth, that they need guidance about the prayer because a lot of them don't understand the importance and centrality of the prayer, and they also don't know the dangers and the punishments that happen because they left them.
الصلاة في غاية الأهمية. الله سبحانه وتعالى يذكرها بعد الإسلام، يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة. إن أهم أمركم عندي الصلاة. كان عمر يفتح لعماله، فمن حفظها وحافظ عليها حفظ دينه، ومن ضيعها فهو لما سواها أضيع. فالصلاة تعليم أن نصلي وأنتم تعرفون أحكام الصلاة ربما أكثركم، أن يتوضأ الإنسان وأن يقوم بين يدي الله سبحانه وتعالى في الأوقات المحددة. إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا، الأوقات الخمسة التي حددها الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يصلي. هذه هي صلة بين العبد وبين ربه، هي العلاقة بين الله وبين الإنسان. فالإنسان إذا تركها فهو تارك لدينه، فهو ترك شيئا عظيما من دينه. أن لا أقول هو كافر، لا أقول هو، لكنه ترك شيئا عظيما من دينه.
So he said that the centrality of the prayer is fixed and established. It's the central pillar of this religion. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, when he would send letters to the governors in the Muwatta, it said that he said that the most important thing is your prayer. And in my consideration, whoever guards his prayer and protects it, he will be more responsible about everything else. But whoever is negligent of his prayers and is derelict in the duty, he will be derelict in other things. So he wrote that to the governors to tell them that focus on the prayer, making sure people pray, but also not trusting if people leave the prayer. Because he said, take your children to the Jum'ah prayer so that they see the prayer. And then he said also, the Quran says that the prayer is in fixed time. So it's important to guard those prayer times, especially in a place you don't have masajid in every place, so you have to be vigilant about that. And he said that it's one of the worst things that you can do is to leave the prayer. So he said, I don't like to say that people are not Muslim if they say they're Muslim even though they don't pray, but it's a very dangerous and precarious situation to be in, and so it's important for people to be aware of that and to be vigilant about their prayer.
دورة للزكاة، دورة للحج، تعمل دورات في السنة وتحددها وتخبر الناس حتى يجوها.
So he said, most of you, you know your prayers, that you have to do wudu and how you pray and these things, but some people don't, or they don't really know the rulings. He said it's important for Zaytun and other organizations that they should really have workshops for people to become more knowledgeable about. Yeah. So during the year they do the 5 pillars, teach the people the 5 pillars. This is important. قال إنه في العام الأول لما كنت هناك أنت ذكرت إذا أحد وجد شيئا في صدره أنه يقول سبحان الملك القدوس، وأنا نسيت سبحان الملك القدوس الخلاق الفعال. Yeah. So he said that last year somebody's asking that you mentioned about if you have a bad thought or feeling like you want to do something that's wrong. He said you put your heart you put your right hand over your heart and you say Subhan al-Malik al-Quddus al-Khallaq al-Fa'al, and you say that كم مرة؟ 3 مرات.
يقولها 7 مرات.
7 مرات. So you say that 7 times. سبحان الملك القدوس الخلاق الفعال 7 times.
7 مرات. سبحان الملك القدوس الخلاق الفعال. هكذا قلبه هكذا. سبحان الملك القدوس الخلاق الفعال. الإنسان في وسوسة.
If you have waswasa, like whisperings in your heart, it's just do that 7 times.
What's the translation?
Glory, transcendent glory is the King, the Holy, the Creator, and the doer of whatever He wills. Subhan al-Malik al-Quddus al-Khallaq al-Fa'al. 7 مرات. Put your right hand over your heart. Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the challenges we have as Muslims in the West is finding the Qibla. And I go to my friend's house, and usually sometimes we're going to pray toward west.
Yeah.
Here we pray to
northeast.
north.
Yeah.
Used to be America west.
Yeah.
They changed it. And today it's west.
هو قال من المشاكل التي عندنا اتجاه القبلة. بعض الناس يصلون إلى شرق أو جنوب شرق في بيوتهم، لكن في المساجد عادة يصلون في الشمال شرق. وقال أنه كان قديما في أمريكا يصلون إلى الجنوب شرق، ثم حولوا في السبعينات. قديما نعم كان.
هو يعني المسلم لا ينبغي للناس أن يختلفوا وأن يكثروا من الخلاف حول هذه القضايا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان. شرع عليكم من الدين ما وصى به نوحا والذي أوحينا إليك وما وصينا به إبراهيم وموسى وعيسى أن أقيموا الدين ولا تتفرقوا. التفرق غير طيب. فالناس الآن يعني هذه كأنها أصبحت أمريكا أصبحت ذات قبلتين. معناها بعضها يصلي على الجنوب الشرقي. أنا أصلي جنوب شرقي لأن هذا أصلي جنوب شرقي. لكن إذا جئت لمسجد فيه ناس يصلون على الآخر أصلي معهم، لأنه هي مسألة اجتهادية. والقبلة يجتهد فيها من المسائل التي يجتهد فيها، كما يقول مالك والشافعي وغيرهم يقولون القبلة اجتهادية. فلأجل ذلك لا نختلف كثيرا في هذا. فإذا هدى الله بعض الناس وغيروا اتجاه المساجدين فهذا الذي أطمئن إليه. لكن إذا ظلوا على الشمال لا تختلفوا. فإذا وجدت إماما يصلي وجماعة تصلي فصلي معه.
He said that this is an issue that people should not be divisive about. That it's well known in fiqh, the qibla is an ijtihadi issue outside of Mecca. So once you go outside of Mecca, it's an ijtihad. And he said the early imams all were in agreement about that. So he said that people differ on that issue, but it shouldn't be a source. He said, his personal. He prays southeast because that's his ijtihad if he's here in the United States. But if he goes to a masjid, he prays with the people and with the qibla. And he said because it is an ijtihad issue and you shouldn't make it. He said the Quran said that one of the foundational principles that Allah revealed is He sent down to all of these prophets telling them to observe this deen, this straight deen, and don't become sects. Don't go into divisiveness and sectarianism. So Allah prohibited that, to become divisive over these issues, especially ijtihadi issues. So it's an ijtihadi issue. He said people have made their ijtihad. In the original fatwa that came from Al-Azhar, there were dissenting voices. They didn't agree on it. But the dominant position in the United States is the Northeast. And it's a valid position. It's an ijtihadi issue. But to say one with absolute certainty is over the other, that's also a problem too, because it is an issue of disagreement. But he said don't make it a divisive issue. It's very important. People shouldn't do that. Yeah. I know there's some ladies though. Go ahead in the back. عليكم السلام. هي سألت عن الخشوع في الصلاة، أحسن طريقة للخشوع في الصلاة.
مسألة الخشوع في الصلاة مسألة مشكلة صعبة كثيرا، لأن الإنسان بإمكانه أن يصلي لكن أن يخشع قلبه. الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: ألم يأن الذين آمنوا أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق. ويقول سبحانه وتعالى: قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون. فالخشوع درجة بها تمام الصلاة، تصح الصلاة لكنها صلاة ناقصة إذا لم يكن بها خشوع. ما معنى الخشوع؟ الخشوع أن يشعر الإنسان نفسه بأنه يقف بين يدي الله سبحانه وتعالى، وأن يقرأ وهو يتابع قراءته كما يقول أبو حمد الغزالي. معنى إذا قال الحمد لله رب العالمين يشعر بأنه حمد الله بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان. إذا قال الرحمن الرحيم يشعر برحمة الله سبحانه وتعالى. إذا قال مالك يوم الدين يشعر بأن يوم القيامة يوم عظيم وأن الله وحده هو الذي يتيكه. إذا قال إياك نعبد يشعر بأن عبادته كلها لله سبحانه وتعالى. قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين. إذا قال إياك نستعين يشعر بأن لا يعين على عبادة الله إلا الله، ما في أحد يمكن أن يساعدك على أن تعبد الله حق عبادته. إذا قال اهدنا الصراط المستقيم يشعر بأنه يتوجه إلى الله بأن يهديه، لأنه لا يستطيع أن يهدي نفسه. فمتابعة القراءة في الصلاة بالقلب هذا يورث الخشوع. والدعاء الذي ذكرته قبل قليل سبحان الملك القدوس الخلاق الفعال يساعد على إزالة الوسوسة في الصلاة، لكن لا بد الإنسان أن يتعود، بمعنى أنه عندما يصلي في مكان ليس فيه استقبال، بمعنى أنه عينيه لا يهتمان لا يرى منهما، لا يركز بصره على شيء. سمعه أيضا إذا كان فيه إذاعة أو شيء يغلقه حتى يكون السمع مستريحا كما يقول أبو حامد الغزالي أيضا مرة أخرى. فالحواس هذه إذا استغرقت مع القلب يكون الخشوع. لكن الدعاء يقول الإنسان: اللهم إني أسألك قلبا خاشعا، اللهم يا رب إني أسألك قلبا خاشعا ولسانا ذاكرا وجوارحا مطيعة وأسألك أحسن العاقبة والخاتمة.
So the question was about khushu' in the prayer, which is a type of awe, an awe that you have in your prayer when you pray. And he said it's very difficult. It's not an easy thing, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although the Quran says, isn't it time for the people who have this iman, that their hearts have khushu'? Isn't it time for them to have khushu'? And they shouldn't be like the people who went before them. As time passed, their hearts became harder and harder, and then they became profligate people. And the Quran also says that the believers are those the successful believers are those who have this khushu' in their prayer. And so he said that the definition of khushu' is, first of all, he said it's from the completeness of a prayer. It's not, the prayer is still valid without it, and which is a blessing from Allah. But it's from the completeness of the prayer. And so, first of all, the definition of it is that you are present with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when you say Allahu Akbar, you actually feel that you're in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then it's also being aware of what you're saying. So when you say the Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, you actually feel, you're aware of the praise, that you're praising Allah. When you talk about Maliki Yawmiddin, you're aware of the Day of Judgment, that they're not just words that you're saying on your tongue, but you're aware of their meanings, and this is part of the khushu'. And then إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, that to you alone we worship, to you alone we seek help, guide us on this straight path. These are real desires in your heart. And he said it's important also that we, this idea of your prayer, all your ritual, your life and your death should be for Allah. As Ibrahim said, for Allah alone, without any partner. And this is from the khushu'. And then he said that it's important that first of all, the dua that he gave you to say 7 times can help you with this, to do that. But he said also that you should be in a place that is not distracting, which is why traditionally the masajids were made in simple form so that not to distract people. But you should focus when you pray. Don't move your eyes around. Focus on one thing. And then also, if there are distractions of sound, which is why traditionally you're not supposed to make noise in a masjid because people are praying. Because he said that if you look at the 5 senses, when the 5 senses are gathered and they're present with the heart, that's khushu'. That's how you get khushu'. But when the senses are being distracted by sensory things, you can't enter into a spiritual state because of these sensory distractions. And so you have to work on practicing this and get better at it as time progresses. But he said, admittingly, it's not an easy thing. It's understood by the scholars to be a difficult thing. Yeah. Khalas. And go ahead. Last one.
نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يجمعنا بكم معنا وإياكم مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. My question is, there are Mexicans here in America who usually call on people to implement and apply the Sharia in the U.S. and ask others to do that, even though they have to use some force. And I've heard Sheikh Radia before said that you don't have a legitimate state authority, so you cannot implement, you have no right to implement Sharia. That's the first part of my question. The other part is there any...
الجزء الأول أن هناك أناس يدعون إلى تطبيق الشريعة في أمريكا، ويقول حتى إذا اضطرنا أن نطبق بالعنف فيجب علينا. هذا الجزء الأول يعني.
Is there any incident in the opinion of the 4 imams where they base their opinion on certain circumstance or a need for people?
فقال هل هناك مثال أو نموذج من الأئمة الأربعة حيث يعني ممكن يستدل باحتياج الناس إلى هذا الشيء أو
هذا هو اللي يشوفه حل من الجهل. هذا نوع من الجهل. تطبيق الشريعة ماذا؟ تطبيق الشريعة بنفسك. يا فلان تقيم الصلاة وآتي الزكاة. هذا هو تطبيق الشريعة. إذا أحملت العنف فإنك لا تطبق الشريعة، أنت تطبق العنف. أنت الآن ضد تطبيق الشريعة.
So he said that this is what he was saying earlier, that the tatbiq al-sharia for the individual without state authority is of what the Prophet ﷺ said to Fudayk. He said, if you do otherwise, you're actually not implementing the sharia, you're implementing something else. So if for instance you use force, what you're implementing is force, you're not implementing sharia.
أنت تطبق الشريعة بنفسك ويكون زواجك على الشريعة، تزوج زواجا صحيحا، تكون معاملاتك غير ربوية، هذا كله تطبيق شريعة. تكون يعني علاقاتك مع الناس طيبة، هذا كله تطبيق شريعة.
So he said,
ما معنى تطبيق الشريعة؟
go ahead. Yeah. So he said marriage, we marry according to Sharia. That's tatbiq al-Sharia, to follow the Sharia in how you marry. follow the Sharia in your commercial transactions, in avoiding usury and doing things. That's tatbiq al-Sharia. There are many things that you can implement Sharia on.
كل وسيلة كل عمل عاد للمفسدة فهو ليس من الشريعة.
He said any action that will actually cause a negative reaction, a mafsada, that's something that's harmful, is not Sharia according to the fuqaha.
الأحكام السلطانية في هذه الديار لستم مطلوبين بشيء منها.
He said what are known as the ahkam al-sultaniyya, which are the areas in Sharia that are implemented by state authority, you have nothing to do with those ahkam. They don't relate to you at all. In this land, you have nothing to do with those ahkam.
Public law.
The public law, yeah, public order.
القانون الخاص هو الذي عليكم أن تطبقوا. هذا قالوا معاهدين في حاشيته وكثير من العلماء. فأنت عندما تقوم هناك أحكام لا يقوم بها الأفراد. الأفراد لا يقومون أن تقوم بها الدولة. أحكام تتعلق بالدول ولا تتعلق بالأفراد. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في مكة كان يطبق الصلاة حتى لا يصلي جمعة. ما صلى الجمعة عشان جماعته. صلى الجمعة جماعة في المدينة لأنه في مكة ما كان في وضع يسمح له بأن يصلي جماعة. يعني هناك الأحكام المكية تنطبق على هؤلاء. من يتجاوز العموم من الذي يحصل بالنهاية؟ يحصل بالنهاية يموت الناس وبالتالي يرتكب أعمالا حراما لأنه أهلك الناس وأدى إلى هلاك الناس. فهو بدل من أن يطبق الشريعة هو طبق عكس الشريعة لأن الشريعة لا تأمره بهذا.
So he said that, there are rules in Islam that only apply to state authority, and they can't be applied by individuals. And he said even in Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, there were things that he didn't apply there because of the circumstance he was in. He didn't pray Jum'ah in Mecca. Jum'ah comes later in Medina because the conditions in Mecca did not facilitate that. And he said, so people that are here that attempt to do these things, he said they're not implementing Sharia, they're causing harm, because this can lead, first of all, if they apply the government laws, they can actually end up even killing somebody, and then that doesn't just cause those people, but it actually will cause a reaction and more people get killed. So he said it's complete. It will lead to a complete disaster, and he said it's not from Sharia.
ولو كان غير مسلم إنكم تذهبون إلى دليل عادي في الحبشة يقول لن يكون مسلما. العدالة هذا من الشريعة.
The justice is from Sharia. The Prophet ﷺ, when he sent the people to Habasha, he said, you're going to a just ruler. He wasn't applying Islamic law. He was applying the law of Ethiopia at that time. But he still called him a just ruler, because you can have justice outside of Islam. He said this understanding of implementation of Sharia is it's misunderstanding.
الناس يقولون تطبيق الشريعة معناها إقامة الحدود قطع الأيدي ونحو ذلك هذا مفهوم عندهم.
A lot of people, he said, a lot of people limit the Sharia. When they think of Sharia, they think of what's known as the hudud, penal punishments. They think that's Sharia. No, Sharia is vast. It's even it's just a portion. It's just a portion of the penal code, because there's other ta'zirat and things that aren't specified in the ones that people know, the famous ones. He said Sharia is much broader than that. He said the universals are applied, and when the universals are applied, very often the particulars are nullified.
أنا سأعطيك مثال. تعرف أيام عمر بن الخطاب كان الإسلام قوي جدا.
When Umar was the Khalifa, Islam was very strong.
كان عام فيه مجاعة.
They had the a year there was a hunger, famine. And Umar, he stopped the implementation of the penal punishments. Because the people had difficult times. Somebody would steal. In normal circumstances, they wouldn't steal.
لأنها تؤدي إلى مفسدة.
Because it would actually lead to a greater harm. So Omar's understanding, his fiqh, was that in this situation, I don't think the punishment is applicable here. And there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said that don't. Yeah, so he said don't apply the punishment while traveling in a journey.
لأن إدراء الحدود للشبهات. يعني أنت بدون سلطان لا يجوز لك التصرف مطلق الكفار.
He said because there's a hadith that said avoid penal punishments whenever there's any doubtful situations. And he said when you don't have courts and you don't have due process of law, you're in situations that could be doubtful. You end up with a vigilante justice.
ثم أن كل واقع يختلف عن واقع آخر.
And then every situation is distinct. It can differ from another situation, and the qadi is the one that determines those distinctions. So that at that time was the appropriate ruling, but now we're in a new time, a different time, and the ruling might differ.
لكن المعاني العامة ولهذا في مصر وفي غيرها يختلفون في هذه الموضوعات. المعاني العامة أول تطبيق الشريعة وأنا قلت هذا في الأزهر مع شيخ الأزهر دعوني هنا السنة هذه كلام عنده. قلت أول مبادئ الشريعة هو عدم الحرب.
He said that, I said this recently, Sheikh Al-Azhar invited me to give a talk to all the Azhari scholars. And I gave a talk and I said the very first principle of Islam is to create a state of peace. That salam, we don't want civil wars. He said this particularized understanding is what I'm warning people about. It's a real problem when people don't understand the universals and they focus on these particulars and they lose sense of the aims and purposes of our sacred law.
والمفاسد التي تحصل وما هي الرحمة التي تنتشر كما يقول القيم قبل قليل الشريعة رحمة كلها وحكمة كلها ومصلحة كلها وعدل كلها. هذه المعاني محكمة ان الله يقول بالعدل والإحسان وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. هذه المعاني الكلية محكمة، فإذا وقع شيء قد يؤدي إلى خلل بهذه المعاني علينا أن نتوقف، وهكذا على الله كثير من الحالات يتوقف.
So, this is something this understanding of the universals is absolutely essential because it will enable you to give the appropriate response at the appropriate time. And he said, and this is what, if you look at Umar radiallahu anhu, in many instances, he did this. He said, I gave you one example, but there are many other instances, and this is the proper understanding. Yeah, this what you've articulated that some of these people have is this. It's a understanding of particulars. They know particular rulings, but they don't understand the framework. Because the particulars are subsumed under the universals. And if you don't understand this, you'll do like those Sahaba did where they made the man take the ghusl and they killed him. Because they only understood the particular and they didn't understand the universal principle there. He said what leads to a mafsada, to something that's harmful, is not permitted in Islam. And
لولا قوله في حديث عاد بكفر لبنيت الكعبة على قواعد إبراهيم على بناء قريش والمشركون البناء الذي بنوه لأنها سيؤدي إلى مفسدة. لو بناها على قواعد إبراهيم لقال قريش غير كعبتنا.
The Prophet ﷺ, he said, had it not been that your people, and he meant the Quraysh in this instance, were new to Islam, I would have destroyed the Kaaba and rebuilt it according to the proper foundations of Ibrahim. So here's an example where the Prophet ﷺ, even though he would have liked to have done something, that was a good thing to do, he didn't do it because he knew that it would actually lead to a worse scenario, which is the Quraysh would say, oh look, he took our Kaaba and he changed it.
معاذ كان يصلي الفجر ويطيل، فالناس هو يطبق القرآن الفجر، إن القرآن الفجر كان مشهودا، لكن الناس شكوا منه يعني عندهم أعمال. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال فتان أنت فدامه هذا اليوم الشديد. لماذا؟ لأنه لم يكن حاجة الناس.
The Prophet ﷺ, Mu'adh, he was implementing a verse in the Quran which says that the Quran at Fajr is something that is witnessed by Allah and the angels, and it has a special place, the Quran of Fajr. And so Mu'adh used to do a very long prayer, and he was implementing the verse in the Quran. But the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard the people complaining, he said to Mu'adh, are you trying to create strife in the hearts of people? Because he understood that that wasn't an appropriate application. You can do that on your own, but other people, if you're going to lead the prayer, you should be short, because people have needs. They have to go to work. They have to do things. And so this is the universal understanding as opposed to the particular. So we need to really understand what implementation means. What's the meaning of the implementation of Sharia? Looking. Because you have to look at what is the consequences of your actions, and sometimes you can have a good action with negative consequences, and so you shouldn't do it. And he said the Quran actually told the Prophet ﷺ, Allah told the Prophet in the Quran not to curse the idols of the people. And even though the idols are cursed, it's a bad thing, but Allah said do not curse their idols, because it will cause them to curse Allah out of their animosity without knowledge. So Allah was cutting the pretext of Allah being cursed because you cursed their idols. So even the Prophet ﷺ was told don't talk about their idols. He said, I think you got the point.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.